You're tuned into RX Radio. Movement prescribed. Brought to you by Prescript.com. A personalized approach to keeping you healthy and making your best even better. Your hosts, Dr. Jordan Shallow and Dr. Jordan Ginta.
Except I don't own it.
Yeah, but you can't think of it like that because everything else seems a lot more bleak and miserable if you think about that.
This is the only place in my life I can go and close the door and people don't disturb me.
Yeah, it's fucking incredible. I'll literally push my table aside, sit cross-legged in the middle of the room.
Oh, dude, I just lay on the floor sometimes.
Yeah, because you
lay on the floor.
And no one can come in and tell you to move.
Fuck you.
Try and do that at home. I would let Fran walks home and you're fucking sitting in the middle of just get the fuck up and make dinner. Like, why are you laying on the floor? Yeah. Is the line in working? So you're getting audio straight from this? All right. So we're just going to hit the old record button. Man, a lot of people. Whoa.
What's happening?
We got an extra channel in here.
What?
I don't know what's going.
Sounds like we're at the ocean. The seashore.
There we go. All right. I think we're cooking now.
Are we back?
Oh, all right.
Don't talk to me either.
Yeah, fuck you too, man.
All right.
I got a lot of feedback last week from me eating during the episode.
Oh, yeah.
Dude, it's a fitness podcast.
See, I don't usually talk to you unless you're scarfing down something out of a Tupperware container, so it doesn't really faze me.
This is my life.
Yeah.
I figured there are way more offensive uses of food. You know what I saw on Instagram the other day? Oh, my God.
I thought that was going somewhere else, but tell me.
No, we'll do the what is it, like the strawberries and never mind.
What? Where's this going?
So, on Instagram the other day, I shit you not. When I see pictures put online of like, they're not selfies, but they're taken with an express purpose. Like, here, take a picture of me doing this. I put myself in the position of the camera person when being proposed was such a preposterous idea. Like, so I shit you not, the guy was sitting at his dinner table about to eat dinner and his eyes were closed, and so he had someone take pictures of him saying grace, which is like, okay, I mean, I didn't read the manual, but I'm pretty sure God doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure like St. Peter's not sitting at the pearly gates going, all right, let's check the gram. Well, a hashtag bless up. That was pretty good.
Right. Double tap.
It's in. Or you know what? He's a man of God. It's right here. It's right here. The old Instagram account. Open the gates. Open the gates. We got a man of God here. It's just like, oh fuck, man, give me strength. Like, if it works at all, that's not how it works.
Not at all.
I think there would have been a few more commandments if Instagram was around back in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw that and I was just like, oh man, it's amazing when you can see how many times a hashtag has been used. Just bless up will blow your mind.
Bless up.
Bless up. Bless up, homie. Hashtag bless up.
I used to be big into hashtags. Big into like making up my own hashtags
because they were phenomenal. Hashtag show me your tits is going to be that'll go down forever in
That's
Instagram.
Fantastic. I hope it has billions of uses. But bless up is something that has never crossed my mind to hashtag.
Were you raised religious?
Yeah, I went to a Catholic college.
Really?
I know.
You?
Yeah, me.
Spontaneously combust? Yeah. They didn't like put like holy water into the well next to your dorm or whatever. I'm assuming it's a well. I'm assuming.
We had to go
whatever
pump from the well every morning.
But when did you kind of give it up? And we're not going to go down the religious rabbit hole. I'm just curious.
Give it up in what way?
Okay, you're likely never really a part of it. Some of the stuff we like literally edit out of the shows of stuff you've done. Incredible. Not exactly punch. I don't think even man of God in your Instagram description would get your ass into heaven.
Bless up.
Oh, you're good now. Like, when did you start like packing it in on the whole?
I'm not a church goer, if that's what you're
goer.
asking.
Right.
You know, I don't really know. I was, every Sunday growing up.
Really?
Go to church, yeah. Went to a Catholic college.
My parents kind of use God as like a babysitter. Like, no, he's definitely watching. He's definitely.
You're not going to get any presents under the tree.
Yeah. That's a serious threat though. Like, I just remember like being 4 to like 16 and you just watch the footprint of the gifts just get a little less in the living room. Now I go home and it's like
a little less magical.
What'd you do for me this year? It's like, okay, that's a good point. What were you going to talk about? Tendonopathy? Tendinosis? Tendonitis?
Is that where we're going with this?
Where did you want to go?
Yeah, we can
Do
go
have anything
there.
else? Well, so we had a few questions, and you get them a lot based on, like, tendinopathy. Tendinopathy is like his new thing. I don't really know why that word has to exist.
That's like the umbrella term, right?
But it's new. It's like people got sick of, that's an umbrella. We're video podcasting
I know.
now.
I got to take advantage of it now.
So that's
I
like,
don't have to explain my hand movements.
where was tendinopathy 10 years ago? Did we just not know about it because we weren't in the field? Because everything was tendonitis.
Yeah. I don't. Now there's two terms: tendonitis, tendinosis,
And tendinopathy.
Well, that's the one that classifies either of.
So that's the umbrella.
That's the umbrella.
I see what
You
doing.
have a tendinopathy.
But it's just, to me, like, we all experience it to some extent, but I think the big misnomer that a lot of people need to get out of their heads right away, especially when it comes to strength sports, is tendinosis, tendonitis, or the umbrella term tendinopathy is not an overuse injury, in my opinion. It's a misuse injury, right? There's some sort of dysfunction, there's some sort of instability that's causing an irritation at where that muscle's insertion attaches into the bone. So now here's another thing you need to consider, right? Do you have a tendinopathy or tendinosis, tendonitis, or do you have an enthesopathy, right? Because there's a difference, right? The enthesis is where the tendon meets the bone. The tendonitis-opathy-osis is where the muscle meets the tendon.
So in my mind, it doesn't fucking matter.
No, and that's the thing. That's the light on the dashboard. That's the mechanical light on the dashboard that says we have some sort of dysfunction. So for me, it's the common ones, and maybe we should go through this. Yeah, let's do it this way. Elbows and knees are probably the most common. Hip and shoulders a little less so.
Yep.
Let's start elbow.
Okay.
I would say with the amount of overhead work done CrossFit, obviously in an Olympic lifting, that has to be a major issue, whether you're doing stuff from a pull-up bar or you're doing thrusters or EMOMs. That's really finding its way into powerlifting culture. EMOM, which is a weird thing.
AMRAP also.
AMRAP. So AMRAP I get because the control is yourself. EMOM I don't get because your ability to recover is so variant from person to person, right? Your ability to recover from that high threshold output is going to be so variant. So why is 60 seconds? It's equally as arbitrary as any other rest period.
Well, I think it's going to be more subjective in that way, but what you need to do is play with the loading to make it appropriate, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, like, you wouldn't say ever do, like, so I guess you're saying percentage work for EMOM is fine?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely, depending on the percentage, depending on the person. And EMOM, I guess you have to change the acronym a little bit, but it doesn't have to be every minute.
Yeah.
You could do like every other minute or every 3 minutes or something like that.
That's a lot of words.
So
I would like to see in a situation like that to have a baseline biometric to go back to. I'm not a huge fan of biometrics, but if we're going to get into the weeds as far as like being very specific in your training, we can find specific biometric. Like we talked a bit about HRV before.
Right.
If you could have something in real time, because here's the thing, like if you're a strength coach and you're prescribing this EMOM and you're just doing it arbitrarily because it's a different loading pattern than likely a lifter's seen before, sure, there might be some benefit to the novelty adaptation that'll occur and increasing an overall workload over time. So say you're going to do this for 10 minutes or whatever. Likely in that 10 minutes, well, the point of it is in that 10 minutes, you'll have done more repetitions at higher weight than you would have if you did a 3x8 that took you fucking 25 minutes because you're taking 5-minute rest periods, right? So for me, it's like having a hard number, and I don't like bar speed because bar speed can be indicative of output. It's not indicative of like recovery. So knowing what threshold you're trying to stay above or what threshold you're trying to get under when it comes to like biometrics and being recovered for the next set, I think that'd be something to monitor within a session. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your intent of using that style of training.
Yeah.
I think it's very effective in CrossFit and things that I've done like that in the past to, especially with gymnastics, actually, to help increase just overall work capacity. If you take that into strength training, that's kind of your volume cycle, like, 12 plus weeks out from competition. I think it can be very helpful there. And then in actual weightlifting, you saw how kind of haphazardly the attempts can go in competition. So I know a lot of people that'll do every 2 minutes training with at least openers leading into competition, so that they're used to taking that percentage weight if they were to, say, follow themselves in competition.
And that's the thing I like about it for strength sports is the specificity of doing 1 rep and still getting your volume in, right? Because a lot of people, when you do rep work, you're really only doing 1 competition rep. Like, I know so many fucking guys that when they deadlift for volume, it's just fucking touch and go. It's like, dude, you did 1 real deadlift, and you did 1 at like 30% assistance with a rebound and like
eccentric load.
It's just like or we're using bumper plates on a fucking Texas bar, and your 300 kilos is out to the. It's like, dude, bring it in, make it competition specific. So I think EMOM, I guess, is good for people who maybe aren't good at calling on that competition execution and getting them to just lift a single. Like, people, if they're pulling lighter weight for more reps per single bout in a set, then it's like, all right, you're really only getting low threshold work in, like low percentage work in for the first rep. How well is that going to transfer when we start now getting into like a peaking or a strength phase where we got to start pulling heavy stuff for singles and doubles, right? And not singles in the sense of pulling a 1 rep max. And I think that's where they're a little bit misguided in their training. Like, I'll pull singles in training. I'm not pulling a 1 rep max in training. 1 rep max stays for the platform. So singles at a high percentage can have a intent behind that given adaptation that we're trying to drive, right? So people think, oh, if I'm lifting 1, I'm going to go prelip and chart. It's got to be 100%. It's like, no. There's a benefit to lifting singles in training, and I think EMOM or ETOM every 2 minutes on the minute,
I'll put a number in there. E2.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Dude. That's marketable, man. You put numbers and letters together. That's when I stopped paying attention in math. Once there was like an X, I was like, y doesn't equal mx plus b. This is the alphabet. This doesn't make any fucking sense. I don't care what the curve of your line is. Okay, so back to tendonitis. So elbow pain, elbow tendonitis, medial epicondylitis, golfers or tennis elbow.
Yeah.
You see a lot?
Yeah. Yeah, I do.
What do you got? What's your go-to?
Go-to in terms of treatment, in terms of diagnosis?
Assessment, whether it be like maybe a takeaway self-assessment, like what potentially could be the cause of that, and then how do you go about treating it?
Yeah.
Maybe less so in the office, but more so like corrective exercise-wise. I mean, without giving away the plot, what do you look at first?
Yeah. So the muscle docism of it's not overuse, it's misuse.
Boom. That's gonna catch on.
Yeah. Hell yeah. It applies to the majority of these situations that I see, and it's not what you're doing in the gym. It's the majority of the time we're in the Silicon Valley here. Everyone's on a computer 35 hours a day. So it's what you're doing outside of the gym 35 hours a day.
I love it.
I know. But it's what you're doing outside of the gym, and then what are you doing to bridge the gap between that and your exercise? If you're on a computer, you're using a mouse all day, and you kind of have these claw hands, and you're going in, you're trying to snatch a barbell over your head with full elbow extension, wrist extension, you're going to stress the fuck out of that medial elbow, the wrist flexors. So you need to be doing something in between leaving the office and putting that bar over your head to warrant loading that position, basically. So my assessment always starts with, all right, what positions are you in most commonly throughout the day? You know, if you're on a computer 8-9 hours a day, okay, then I'll usually poke around, see what the wrist flexors feel like. From there, it's what causes pain. Do you have pain? Like a lot of people say things like shampooing their head, like pressing into their head, things like that. Wrist flexion elbow.
I get it.
I'll kind of figure out the things that provoke it. And then the most common start to the treatment is, well, stop doing that shit that hurts.
With an asterisk, scalability. I think you have to, depending on who you're working with, sure, they want to hear that, but I think being able to scale your intervention of loading is going to be big. So the way I look at it is like, there's a graph. I love having video podcasts. I don't realize how much I use my fucking hands for this shit. So there's like a graph of like progressive overload, right? So is that
what
class?
What is that?
Classes just started?
I think it's outside.
Okay. I have no idea. I don't know what's going on. One of the boys in the hood are strolling by or something like that. Punk-ass kid in an Eldorado.
I guess so.
Welcome to California, man. I think they call that Cali swag.
Cali swag.
Where we come from. So you got this graph of progressive overload, right? So you're trying to overreach to drive some sort of adaptation, whether that's metabolic, endurance, whether that's strength, whether that's hypertrophy. You're trying to test some system. You're trying to do something you've never done before, right? And so in that, you're trying to make incremental overload to a baseline progression. So you're trying to trend upwards in your performance in whatever field that you're trying to actually excel in. So what people don't realize is that in this graph, there's sort of two safety lines on either side that kind of create a 15-degree net of too much overload one way. You're going to run into that and you're going to get injured. Like if you went into a squat one day and you were just feeling it. You're like, fuck coach, I'm going off program. It's a Yodo day. If I could use a Junta-ism.
Absolutely.
A red, white, and Jordan-ism. You only die once, and today feels like a good day to die. So, but if you were to lay it out and be like, all right, 7 racks, back squat to the fucking house, and you got hurt, you'd be like, yeah, dude, that's like 45% over your 1 rep max. No shit, you got hurt. Right, so it's a deviation of load over 15% is usually what the research says as far as increasing likelihood of injury substantially. What people don't realize, that 15% decrease in load is also going to set the stage for an injury. So with tendonitis issues, and you hit the nail on the head, is finding triggers, right? Because most people think it's load dependent. What I find with tendonitis issues is that it's not necessarily load dependent, it's range of motion specific. Right, so it's
positional.
It's positional. So scaling the position doesn't necessarily mean scaling the load. So I find with elbows, take bodybuilders for example, or like kind of bro gym warriors. You can get them to do like one of the things I'll ask.
Bro gym warriors.
Yeah, man,
that's a weird jumble of words.
Trust me, that explains their whole outlook on training.
Bless up.
Is a jumble hashtag bless up.
Bless up.
So I'll ask him like, oh, it hurts at like the elbow when I do skull crushers. And it's like, does it hurt when you do rope extensions? It's like, no. It's like, well, what's the difference, right? It's elbow extension, but it's the position of the shoulder. All right, so now the position of the shoulder is going to dictate pain. Now we need to change and scale the load of the shoulder. Long head of the triceps, or we're moving into structurally more unstable positions of the shoulder. Now it's like, all right, well, dude, if it doesn't hurt doing tricep extensions or things in a neutral shoulder position or a structurally stable shoulder position, we can still train while we promote, like, it's like in hockey, they teach you to pass where the player is going to be, not where he is. You want to create mobility and stability to where you're going to load, not to where you are. So if someone comes in and like, oh, an elbow extension or tricep extension with a rope at a neutral shoulder doesn't hurt, but it hurts when I go overhead of like a skull crusher or a single arm dumbbell extension, it's like, okay, cool. Let's do mobility work or stability work in increasing planes that you can't load elbow extension in, but we're training the shoulder to be able to prepare to stabilize in that position when we get there. Then in a few weeks, when we're just doing your rope extensions, we're going to move that shoulder angle under load and increase or change the force curve on the tricep. So hopefully your elbow tendonitis. Because then people come in, oh yeah, bro, definitely got golfer's elbow. When's the last time you swung a fucking club? You don't have golfer's elbow. Easy there. You're really more of a John Daly than a Tiger Woods there, Haas. Like I'm not seeing golf coming from this, or a Charles Barkley, if you will. One of my favorite pro-am golfers of all time. But so then that is a diagnostic criteria, right? A lot of orthopedic testing is just provocation. How can we make shit hurt?
Yeah.
And it's reproducibility and making shit hurt. Is the test sensitive or is it specific? If it's the negative, it rules things out. If it's positive, it's good at ruling things in. That's orthopedic testing. You've already done it for me. I can tell based off what hurts when you bench or what hurts when you do pull-ups or tricep extensions or whatever, what orthos are going to be positive. So I don't really need to do that. I don't need to aggravate the shit out of you in my office. It's like, all right, I know based off history, and then we can just plan from there. So for me, and you brought up a good point, because I think there's the idea of actually looking at the fucking elbow itself. I think the Instagram fucking physical therapy chiro world has gone so like fucking global holistic that it's just like, no, see, it's like your right hip is off and your SI joint is, and it's like, bro's elbow hurts. And whether it's physiological or psychological, if homeboy just paid you a couple $100 to take a look at his elbow, you better just even just look at it like, oh yeah, that's an elbow, all right. It's got some bones in there and some stuff. So I think so many people in our space, they just kind of go, no, it's you know what it is? It's security through obscurity. Right? They just try and get so fucking esoteric in their diagnosis. Like, just look at the fucking elbow first, please. Just poke it, do something.
Yeah. There's just these trends that roll in and out.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's solid principles to rehab that, yes, there are exceptions to, but it's not always going to be that exception. That exception might make you seem unique and cool and different, but fuck you. A lot of times it's not that.
Yeah, and you're going to get that fringe case where you hit it out of the park, and they're going to, I saw 20 other people, and then I saw him. It's like, yeah, but he treats everyone the same way for this random fucking cause of your elbow pain that 98% of the people don't fucking have. Yeah. So he's missing the boat. You're just someone that's willing to write a fucking testimonial on his Yelp page or whatever.
Yeah.
So for me, it's like, start with the elbow, absolutely. For lifters, I would say it primarily moves to the shoulder. But you did make a good point about the wrist and kind of tonicity through the flexors and the pronators of the wrist just based off position. Yeah. So I think with elbows, that's a good place to start. Medial, more common than lateral. So the lateral stuff I actually see more with like a supraspinatus, dare I use the word weakness. So they'll actually get like brachialis pain. So a lot of like, again, we're going to go like more bodybuilders, people who do lateral raises on a consistent basis. Again, it's an orthopedic test. If I'm here, right, like if I can do I don't know, a reverse curl or something like that without any pain.
Clean pull.
Clean pull. There you go.
Pull.
Same thing. That's what my clean pulls look like. It's reverse curls. And I could fucking clean pull. Anyways. But this static elbow position, it's like, okay, likely it's an issue with the brachialis, not the actual bicep or not the extensors, right? The brachialis is going to cross the elbow and is actually the primary flexor. So if I'm doing a lateral raise, I'm keeping a static angle at the elbow. And what's doing that, my bicep is disadvantaged because my wrist is in a pronated position. That's being held up by the brachialis. So a lot of things can mirror or mask themselves as tendonitis, but it could just be just weakness or just I use the analogy of like the physics thing, straight line versus path of least resistance. Like if you're setting the path of least resistance from your shoulder downward to go through that brachialis, then you have applied force is greater through that muscle than it should be because it's not being buffered upstream in the shoulder. And then the tissue tolerance is relatively low. Applied force greater than tissue tolerance, you have yourself an injury, my friend.
Yeah, for the normal people in the world that have no idea what you just said, that means
it's video. I gotta get a whiteboard. All right, shoot.
That means that if you're in less than another muscle doc favorite word, optimal position, if you're not in great positions and you're not using more so the structure of your body to obtain those positions, then it comes into the muscles and the less resistant to injury. Maybe you don't like the way I'm explaining
I don't know if structure
but,
is the right word, but I get what you're saying.
But, well, I'm thinking, probably not for what you're saying. I'm thinking in terms of snatch, clean jerk. If you can't get into a locked out overhead position in a snatch, then we're getting into the function. We're getting into the rotator cuff. We're getting into, maybe the biceps, triceps for that overhead lockout. So that's going to put a lot more stress through that area than if we had a locked out structurally stable position, then that's going to be able to support a lot more weight and do so without putting us at risk for injury.
Yeah, so the difference I see there, you're talking about full integration and axial load. I'm talking about isolation. That's the only difference. But I totally agree.
I don't understand isolation. I'm sorry.
So I've been thinking about this a lot, actually, because I don't really agree in the term isolation.
Yeah, there's no such thing as isolation.
I think at best you're looking to disadvantage prime movers in the rank order in which they'd be recruited. That's how you should look at isolation.
Yeah, you're looking to stress a certain area more so than it may be stressed in other positions.
Muscles contract based off their size. Bigger muscles will do the job first, right? So it's hard.
That's how it should be, damn it.
Yeah. But
bless up.
Bless up. Just get some holy water here.
Yeah.
But is King's Cross, is that your university? No. What was your university? King's.
King's College.
King's College, right? King's Cross was a place in Australia, I think. Anyway, so that was elbow. Medial, more common than lateral. Extensor issues, I find that more to be like a brachialis thing. For me, stability of the shoulder. Because usually these things are going to manifest. But, too, in your training, put in gatekeepers, put in exercises that are going to force that joint in the so the elbow, if it's going to be most compromised in an unstable shoulder position, keep exercises that are more or less isolation at the elbow in static positions of instability of the shoulder, because that'll give you a moment arm of, or not a moment arm, an arc of information, right? Single arm overhead tricep extensions are one of the most inane exercises in the world. It's like you're milking a cow from the basement. Like, it's the fucking dumbest thing. But what am I doing? I'm keeping this glenohumeral joint in a very structurally unstable position. I'm forcing the scapula and the glenohumeral joint to require function, and I'm testing the resilience of the elbow in that position. If I start getting pain here, I know what's coming down the track. This is 180 degrees of shoulder flexion or abduction, however you want to look at it. If I wasn't doing these movements and the only thing I was doing is at a 90-degree plane, I'm missing 90 degrees of potential information, time in which I could stave off. So if this starts to hurt, check yourself. Check yourself. Look at the elbow. Look at the wrist. Look at the shoulder. So that doesn't hurt coming down the track when I got a bench press in 6 weeks or 8 weeks or prep for a meet or whatever. So just understanding what some of these fringes are and understanding that loading these weight, like, I don't really care if my dumbbell tricep overhead and single arm extension goes from 45 pounds to 60 pounds, but it's an indirect way of building strength because it screens for the things that are actually going to put my strength at a detriment if my fucking elbow starts hurting because of whatever, right? And it's training a joint. I got to look at it like, how many powerlifters have knee and elbow issues? 90% of them. How many go in and like, oh, arms are bullshit, bro, fluff and buff and all this stuff and all show, no go. It's like, fine, fuck your biceps, fuck your triceps. You want to be strong with no muscle? That's your prerogative. Train your elbow, train your knees, right? There's nothing wrong with a quad extension. If you're going to put on fucking knee wraps as a powerlifter and overload the shit out of your body with stuff you really can't be lifting anyways, but you're worried about the shear force on your patellofemoral or whatever, like, dude, you got to parameterize where the force goes here, because that's just a really dumb argument. So that's elbows. Knees.
So in short, stop basing your sport around accessory work and put your hands over your head.
Well, no, because accessory work would be.
No, that's my summation of what we just said.
Yeah, but your whole sport is over your head.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is if you're in bodybuilding, you're putting so much stress on these what I would call accessory movements, stressing out these isolation patterns.
Yeah.
Then as opposed to moving through full range of motion, you're going to get that integration through full range of motion that's going to keep you in a more balanced position, take a little bit of the stress off of these very non-prime mover-ish muscles that you may be stressing out in terms of, just to increase size of a muscle, things like that.
Minimum effective dose. That's what you need.
Yes.
That's what you need. So
Agreed.
yeah, on both sides too, because I think, and we're coming at this from two. So you mentioned the bodybuilding thing. You want a minimum effective dose of integration, whether that's like a full barbell over the head, just to make sure that the joints are resilient enough that you can train them continually in isolation, and that chain is going to allow for progressive overload in isolation at any one joint.
Okay.
The inverse is also true. If you're an Olympic lifter, it benefits. Like, look at the best Olympic lifters in the world. They're fucking jacked, right? Yeah. Koklov or whatever his name is. Koklov, right? Dmitry
KL.
Klokov.
Yeah.
Okay. He's and that's not by accident.
No.
It might be
that's
by
also
drugs.
Russia.
It might be by drugs, but it ain't fucking by accident.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think too many people they get behind their camp of lifting and they just stay there, like fucking powerlifters. Little fucking natty USAPL. Yeah, bro, like daily undulation, periodization. I squat like 7 times a week comp style. I'm going to go in for like an RP 3.5. You done with those collars? Like, get the fuck out of my eyes right now, you punk ass kid. And the guy's got 12-inch arms and he's wearing his sister's virus fucking spandex. Like, you will go nowhere. Why? Look at the top performers. Like, I walk into a warm-up room at the meets I compete at now and I'm just like, fuck. I'm the little guy, dude. I'm fucking 270 pounds, and I'm the little guy.
Yeah.
Muscle moves weight. There's an understanding of, for hypertrophy style training, you got to have a minimum effective dose to be able to integrate, and vice versa, dude. Some of these bodybuilders that are coming out now are monsters. Luke Sando is coming out of the UK. he can like be 4 weeks out from a meet and be deadlifting my 1 rep max for reps, 4 weeks out from a competition. So it's like you got to have, again, he's might be almost too strong and too dense or whatever the dumb bodybuilding terms are, but finding minimum effective dose and waving that in to complement the center of that Venn diagram, and that's performance in your sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the big case. It's sport specific. So it doesn't matter. I mean, I'm going to talk shit on bodybuilders because
you used to be one.
Yeah.
Surface.
You know, gives me maybe more reason to talk shit on them. But at the same time, I'm seeing this through my lens of Olympic lifting and just strength training in general.
Through elitism and fanny packs is what you're seeing.
Elitism. Come on.
I felt the judgment, man. I felt the judgment.
Maybe on the bodybuilders. Powerlifting, okay, but still a sport based around accessory movements. But
all right, come talk to me when you want to lift some real weight there.
Boss. No. I'm just talking shit.
Yeah,
but the idea is if your goal is to train for aesthetics, then make sure that you are approaching this in a way where you're going to be able to get the most lifespan out of the way that you're training without irritating these specific areas. If it's to squat, bench, dead as much as you can, make sure that you're getting in these accessory movements or training in a way that's going to allow you to stay in the positions that allow you to squat, bench, and deadlift the most weight with the least irritation. And then for Olympic lifting, the same thing. You have to be able to put yourself in optimal joint positions to lock a barbell out over your head. And if that is the thing that's causing you pain, you need to take it a step back, maybe not have that barbell over your head, and retrace your steps and create stability in a way that's going to allow you to do that in better position so that that path of least resistance that you talked about is not one that's going to be harmful to us.
I feel like we just had like everyone's going to assume we just like dropped like 100 milligrams like modafinil or something before we just.
I don't even know what the fuck that
This podcast is brought to you by the good people at Adderall. Okay, so we're talking knees now because knees gets a little bit. I find knees is a little bit more kind of broad brush than elbows because elbows we have the obvious medial lateral, right, and the extensor, flexor. They be more involvement with the supraspinatus with one, more involvement with external rotation in the other. Knees, people just go, oh, I have knee tendonitis. It's like, okay. Just as there was two components to the elbow, there's two components to the knee, quad versus patella. And for me, like, it's an internal logical consistency that I've been basing a lot of my treatment off of, and I get a lot of success when I look at it this way. Granted, like, multivariant, depends on the sport, depends on the person, depends on the lifestyle, so on and so forth. Quad above the knee, more often than not, hip flexor related or hip flexion related, let's say that way. I think hip flexor is too commonly used as a term to broad brush 8, 9 in muscles that are going to go through a particular joint action, where above the knee, quad tendon, itis, opathy, osis, whatever, that's more going to be like if you do like a Thomas test, you're likely going to have a peripheral issue. You're going to have a 2-joint hip flexion bias. Your knee is going to be extended. The rectus femoris is going to be involved, which is going to be the most peripheral hip flexor. And then you're going to obviously have up the chain issues with the TFL, pectineus, adductor brevis, gracilis, sartorius, psoas, and iliacus. I think I got all of them.
Hip flexors.
Yeah, hip flexors. But they got to be specific because I think a lot of issues that we talk about is bridging the gap between where people try to oversimplify things that for whether they're ignorant to the actual specifics or they're trying to relay a message, that getting lost in translation is where a lot of these mistakes happen. So you have to fucking be specific. This shit fucking matters because if you just go, strengthen or functional or you say these buzzy things that people kind of get, it's like, yeah, but you're just setting them up for failure because they can approach this with absolute confidence because they think they understand. It's like, dude, I don't even have any idea what I'm talking about. And this has been my every waking thought for the last 12 fucking years of my life. Right. So I think it matters when you talk about that. So for me, it's quad, osis, itis, opathy is going to be more hip flexor related. Granted, it's multivariant and rotation and different planes because each one of those hip flexors does have an intent through either internal rotation, external rotation, extension, adduction, abduction. They're going to have secondary and tertiary roles because it works on a ball and socket joint. But more often than not, getting the hip in extension, getting the knee in flexion, and then varying the degrees of abduction and internal rotation or external rotation while in extension is going to help target different muscles that flex the hip, and that's going to help with pain at the quad tendon. And then I find patella tendon, so below the knee down into the anthesis on the tibia, is more rotational based. People that lack internal rotation on the hip usually have more issues with that. Because think about it. If the femur is not moving as it should and that articulation with the tibia isn't staying consistent throughout deep flexion, and there should be a moment of rotation to accommodate for the position of the foot, like when you're squatting, then you're just generating torque. Like the tibia is moving because the foot's in one place, and you're not having that reciprocal rotation on the tibia. There is almost like, then this is the internal logical consistency of the theory, is you're just creating a torsion. Anytime you have a hinge joint, elbow or knee, and you don't have something above it that's going to rotate properly, it adopts the force of that rotation into the hinge. So now you have a uniplanar joint having to accommodate for movements through other planes.
Whoa.
Yeah, I know. So I say that. I got that one down. I've said that a lot.
No, I agree with I agree a lot with that. So what do you see more often in powerlifting?
Lack of internal rotation, patellar tendonitis.
Okay. So
I would say, but like 70-30.
Okay.
Just because people don't understand 90 degrees, like orthogonal tight corners in your body don't make sense. There's rarely a position where being at a joint angle of 90 degrees is optimal. I love how you kind of cowered when he said it, like, oh, God, he's going to kill me for this. Here comes the belt. No, it's just like, think of the squat, right? The squat, for example. Like, if you squat to 90, that's actually the most shear force on the knee.
Yeah.
Glute isn't in a position to activate the stability of the femur. We really got a soundtrack running in the background. What is this? Who is this? Is Rush?
This is like 1980 workout.
Is it Van Halen?
jams.
Sorry, dude. I got this guy in my fucking ear. All right. I thought we weren't talking to you. I like this better. We got Marky Mark on the ones and twos here.
Hey, fuck you, Shallow.
Well, I think he could say that for himself. So for me, it's more not understanding like this 90-90 craze that's coming along with the hip thing, right? So I think it's not like, think about the shoulder too, right? Like if I want to be in a scaption position when I train my rotator cuff. Why? Because yeah, I might look like a fucking pop machine with a head, but my scapula has a concavity to it that sets a trajectory for a neutral shoulder to be in relative to my body's position about 20 to 30 degrees of flexion, right? So it's the same thing with the hips. It's, you know, there's such a prevalence of like doing 90-90 stuff. That's a good way to generate torque in your knee. Like if you don't have the internal rotation as squat and you start to see that foot flare out at the bottom, it's like, okay, yeah, you're lacking internal rotation, but you just need to antrovert your arc of rotation. You need to activate into internal rotation. You don't need to stretch into internal rotation because there's no hold there, because the muscles that are going to externally rotate your hip, and that's, we're talking lateral rotator group, piriformis, obturator, superior inferior gemellus, like every little thing. You have like 8 or 9 muscles again that are going to rotate the hip, and very few that are going to actually balance. So there's pretty good research actually on hip pathology and a dissonance in strength between adduction and abduction, right? So the way I look at it, you actually need to strengthen your adductors, like something like a Copenhagen plank. Everyone that comes in, I say everyone, like broad brush, but I would say 95% of people that come in with internal rotation issues manifesting a patellar tendonitis, and it's confirmed, like just do a quick assessment of their stability on one side or the other. See how if they try that 90-90 position, they fall away to the other side. You put them in a Copenhagen plank, where there's basically like a side plank with the involved leg on a bench, and then you bring the other leg off the floor, so you're holding the entire body weight with the external obliques on one side, on the downside, and then the adductors on the side that's up, which happens to be your anterior oblique sling for our anatomy trains friends out there. If you test that one side or the other, the side that's lacking internal rotation is going to lack that activation into adduction. It's paired motor patterns: abduction, external rotation, internal rotation, and adduction, right? That's kind of how we move up and down. Shoulders and hips kind of work the same way. When I'm in the bottom of a bench press, extension, abduction, external rotation. When I'm in the bottom of a squat, abduction, external rotation of the hips. And then the inverse has to be true. So that's how I look at it in a nutshell. Address the oh, here's another thing: hip airplanes.
Yeah.
Do you do them?
Every now and then. I wouldn't say it's a staple. I do a lot of single leg RDLs, so kind of a more static version of that.
So here's the thing. I think that's for lower bar squatters. Think of it this way. I've been doing this in the office lately. It's been kind of cool to test. if you assume your squat stance right now, if it's safe for you to do so, if you're listening, draw a straight line down from your hip down to the floor. If you're a low bar squatter, there's nothing there. There's nothing. It's floor. Your foot is like another 6 to 8 inches off to the side.
Right.
Create in your mind a degree, like you had a compass measuring the degree between that straight line of the ground and where your foot is, right? So say that's 40 degrees, right? 40 degrees of relative abduction due to this plumb line of gravity that we're creating. Now what I want you to do is now stand on that one leg. So stand on whatever leg you're measuring. Now keep that foot and knee in line like you're squatting, and rotate your torso. So do a hip airplane with your chest parallel to the floor to a point where the pelvis and femur position is imitating that 40 degrees or gets to that 40 degrees that you're in when you're squatting. How many people can actually do that? Very minimal. At least people I see, because everyone I see is in some sort of pain through the hip and knee or even low back. They can't do it. So what does that tell me? That tells me that you're hiding the force through structure. That's why your SI joint hurts.
And I think that's a lot of, I mean, I'm not saying this in an offensive way, but that's a lot of what powerlifting is putting yourself in the most optimal leverages to lift as much weight as you possibly can.
So in low performers, yeah, absolutely. So the and I don't want to.
Well, right.
Because think of it this way, right? It's, to me, that having that component is allowing yourself to load adequately through a helical axis, through a y-axis. Like if we wanted to hang something heavy on the wall, I'd use a screw, not a nail. If I can generate the relative stability through that hip in that advantageous position, the stability is going to work around that axis. So a lot of people prop themselves up on leverages. You'll get to a glass ceiling quicker.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with that, because you take the best squatter, best deadlifter, best bench presser in the world, and you put them in. So is the best deadlifter in the world a sumo puller?
Yeah.
Okay, because they're using those leverages to put them in a more optimal position to lift more weight off the ground, right? Best squatter, is he a high bar squatter or low bar squatter?
Low.
Right, because you're in better leverages, more stable structural positions with the bar lower down on your back than higher up, right? So in all cases, it's about creating the most optimal structure, but in the high performers, it's about matching that with the function.
And that's what I'm saying this does. So, like, you can some people need to wrap their head around the fact that they're too weak to get hurt, right? It's okay. They're too weak to get hurt.
So they're not working with enough weight to cause injury from the weight.
Exactly.
Maybe from how they're moving, though.
Yeah, it could be like my point being, I got a lot of questions about a certain person, Mark Ripito, who said you don't need to do any unilateral movements. That's adorable, old man with hip bursitis. Here, let me bring you up to the fucking times and the current literature. It's like you do if you're actually trying to lift heavy shit, right? And I think the unilateral stuff, lifting heavy shit, means, okay, you got the structure, you got the technique. Now we need to limit as much of that force that's inevitably going to go in there. Because the thing, when the heavy guys, when shit goes bad, it doesn't go kind of, ow, my knee hurts. It goes right to the hospital, right? Yeah. So it's like shit is tearing off the bones. So you need to make sure that you're buffering that force. And I think this test, I want to see people do it. If they're still listening, God bless your soul.
Yes, I'm sorry if I interrupted that.
No.
But I want to see
if
it too.
If you're still listening to the episode, period. I wasn't listening. It was not a shot at you. I'll make that very clear when I take my shots at you. But take a video of, like, set up in your squat stance, do a couple reps, and then stand on one of the legs, preferably one that's lacking internal rotation, and then get in a chest parallel to the floor position in a single leg RDL, so the other hip's in active extension using the hamstring, glute, fucking even the gastroc if you want to tie the whole thing together. And then try and open up to the point where you've created that relative angle of your squat stance by changing not the position of the femur on a fixed pelvis, but the pelvis on a fixed femur. Because that's the thing. Like, yeah, you can put on your hip circle and march across the gym all day and recreate strength to that point. But that's not the test. We're trying to replicate stability in that position. Mm-hmm. Fucking unbelievable. Like, I can downregulate pain in someone in a hip and knee issue or SI joint issue. like 40, 50% just by getting them, because stability is so easy. You hold their hand, you'll walk them through it, hold here.
Yeah, there's a large neurological adaptation portion to stability.
Yeah.
So you can have really good progress in a really short time.
Yeah, and I think the more specific you can be with it, like any adaptation, the better that's going to hold and the better that's going to downregulate pain. Because if we haven't damaged structure yet, all of that pain, and this kind of brings it to a good point. We had a question about why isometrics. And this is from Andrew Serrano, so I had to give a shout out to him. Why isometrics are good for tendon pain. Now, this is something that we've looked into a little bit, research I've seen someone in the past, and maybe you could talk about isometrics in general. Do you use isometrics in your training?
There's a lot of isometrics. So basically just creating stable positions, being able to resist force in those positions.
Oh my God, did you just say stability? Oh my God! Finally, we've come to an agreement. No, I like your holds, I guess is what you're saying, like your overhead holds.
Right, and yeah. So I think there's a lot of misinterpretation about that confrontation that we had, both from other people and maybe between us. But I'm not saying that strength and stability are the same thing.
No.
But strength in one area may require stability in another.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm doing isometric overhead holds, I may not be building strength in my rotator cuff, but I could be building a lot of core strength. I may not be building coordination, which I think is a large part of stability in my shoulders, but I am increasing the ability of them to resist force in a sport-specific position, which I think falls into the category of strength. So I'm creating a strong overhead position. Yeah. I may not be creating strength in a dynamic way of getting a barbell into my overhead position, but I'm able to, if I hold a 35-pound kettlebell over my head and I try and put an 80-pound kettlebell over my head and I can't do it, and then I go through a strength progression or whatever you want to call it, to get that 80-pound kettlebell over my head, and I can hold it there for 30 seconds, a minute, whatever, then I have increased my strength in that position. So there is, whatever you want to call it, whether you want to call it stability, strength, a little bit of a mixture of both. I think they're very closely related. I think if you really look into the details of each, there's definitely a difference of being stable in a position, being strong in a position. And a lot of times we'll talk about how stability will govern your strength. So you can't be strong in a position that you're not stable in. So there's a lot of overlap to me. So I'm not saying that they are one and the same, but I'm not saying that they're two completely different things either.
Yeah, I don't think mutual exclusivity could be claimed for either of them.
Right.
So yeah, isometrics I think are good. And to get back to his question, I think let's stick with the knee. Like I would say, anyone who having tendonitis, osteopathy issues, with a caveat, because I think the pain modulation, downregulation comes from mechanoreceptor sensitivity. And I think like a hypersensitivity. I think some studies I've read have been about like fibromyalgia, right, like doing some of these pains. So a tricky pathology to kind of navigate and extrapolate from. But I would warn someone that if you're using isometrics in a position of pain to just modulate pain without actually addressing the underlying dysfunction that's causing pain, causing that light on the dashboard, you're putting tape over the light on the dashboard. Right. It can be, and that's a problem I have with a lot of these modalities, like a lot of these, we talked about the Thera, whatever, the Fox and things like that, things that are good at maybe inhibiting that pain gate. It's like there's pain for a reason. That's very valuable information that you need to discern, read the code, plug it in, and see where the dysfunction is. So I think the simple or not so simple answer to the question of isometrics, why do they or how do they downregulate pain? I think a lot of it has to do at the level of actual pain gate transmission and playing with this mechanoreceptor sensitivity that you might have. What does that mean? Like, well, it means that if you do wall sits before you squat to trick your knee into not feeling pain, you could be then that override could be potentially damaging in the long term if that beacon of dysfunction gets like stifled out, and then all of a sudden you're loading through that dysfunction until something goes wrong. So I don't know if pain modulation is really what we should be driving. We should be looking at function modulation. We should be looking at function improvements, not pain improvements. Verbal analog scale. Insurance companies don't give a shit about pain. That's a good way to look at it. If you get in a car accident and you get paid out, if you can return to ADLs, activities of daily living, but you're still at a 9 out of 10 pain, we'll see you the fuck later. You'll get a check from us. Never. So I think a lot of times the pain thing can be so subjective and variant from person to person and influenced by other factors that trying to just focus on pain, albeit proven fairly effective if our goal is to get out of pain. But why are we trying to get out of pain? We're trying to get out of pain to perform better.
Right. And I think a good gauge for that is lingering pain versus acute pain. If you can get out of that pain, you know, for a window of time to do your squats or whatever, then you're not actually fixing the problem. If you're in kind of a lingering pain over, you know, the next couple days, weeks, whatever, and you can do your corrective exercise, whatever you're doing, your treatment to get that, well, not really chronic, but that lingering pain to go away, then you're having an effect on the thing. It's not, all right, I did the thing, it doesn't hurt, so I'm going to go squat. It's, all right, I've been doing the thing for this many weeks, and then my daily pain is much lower than it has been. I'm going to reintroduce those movements that were provoking it before and see how it feels with those.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at like pharmacological interventions and pain modulation. Look at a cortisone shot. Yeah, that'll take the inflammation down on the sidelines. That'll also take 4 years off your career, right? So but if you can use that, or like injection into the spine or things like that, more up our sort of wheelhouse, it's like if you can use that to get you in a position, because the inhibition caused by that pain isn't allowing you to correct some of the underlying dysfunctions, then fucking shoot up, man. I'm all for it. But if we have to exhaust all measures of corrective intervention first before that's on the table, right? So it's increasing the severity of the intervention gradually, with the only focus of being, okay, let's give me a window, give me a foothold so I can start working on improving some of this dysfunction. Then we'll start moving forward. But the people who want to go, oh, I think I'm going to get cortisone, like, all right, get the fuck out of my office. Like, because you're going to get cortisone, it'll last for a year, then you're going to do it for 6 months. But if you do it right away, and then it's warranted and you're functioning well, or you're inhibited by your pain that you can't function at all, take the shot. Here's going to be the rehab protocol. We'll get you to move better after the cortisone. Then we'll extend the shelf life of that injection, hopefully never have to do it again, because we can functionally override any structural damage.
Right. There's no easy answers in these cases. If you're having pain, it's for a reason, and taking it back to, it's probably misuse. You're probably doing something wrong, unless there's some sort of, you know, acute structural injury that that has caused damage that we're not going to fix with, you know, corrective exercises. Then the case is you need to fix your movement pattern, you know, your strength, proportion, stability in certain areas before you're going to be pain-free.
Yeah, and the acute thing doesn't really exist in the realm of osteitis and opathies either. So I think when you start to have these lingering things, it's just this subacute or sub-threshold stimulus that you just accumulated over time. Now, one thing I kind of want to close on is what the role of maybe dietary interventions are. Because, like, it's fucked, dude. I'm in, like, a few forums where I sort of act as a voice. I wouldn't say the voice, but a voice of hopefully reason and logic. So, like, Mind Pump's forum, I'll queue in there. John Meadows' Mountain Dog forum, I'll queue in there. And, like, dude, how many times I've had to just, like, I wrote this, like, fucking dissertation defense about why these people are wrong. And then I just close my laptop, I go to bed, and I, like, just change it in the morning to be less offensive. So, like, curcumin, turmeric, fish oil, what is the potential of these, I don't want to say chemical, but, like, these nutritional interventions for things like, what is going on? Is that in my head? Am I having a stroke? What's going on here?
Landscaping day.
Oh, for fuck's sakes. On garbage day, too. We got lucky here in Santa
know.
Clara. But these things like, oh, my elbows hurt. Bro, gram of fish oil a day. I don't know to which we can benefit from applying a chemical solution for a mechanical problem. That's my Instagram post.
Right. It's not a one-to-one answer. But a lot of these things make little changes. So say you're chipping away at it from 2, maybe even 3 different directions. One is the movement, the Z-axis. I don't know anything about a 3-axis graph. God. But one side we'll say are factors increasing. Let's keep it 2. Factors increasing inflammation, factors decreasing inflammation.
God.
All right. Say I have this much inflammation, right? So
we have this on video, so if you want to check it out on YouTube.
I know.
It's riveting shit.
But not really. So mechanical is going to be one. Fixing the stressors that you're putting on that area, or just eliminating them temporarily. And again, this is probably the second or third time I've said this. I'm not saying stop training. I'm saying stop causing that thing to hurt that you're causing to hurt by doing the thing that's making it hurt. So take off the mechanical stress. That's going to chip away this way, right? Dietary, you can chip away from both sides of this. So say you take your fish oils, your turmeric, your whatever, your
chondroitin,
glucosamine, chondroitin,
shark
your
fins.
collagen, your sharks, your sea animals, I don't know. But that's chipping away from this end, right? So we're decreasing overall systematic inflammation. And then say we're doing things that increase inflammation, like eating high sugar diet, where we have maybe a sedentary lifestyle. We're drinking alcohol, and I don't drink alcohol much, and I do lift weights often, so I'm pretty in touch with the waves of inflammation I'll get, and I can almost predict what I'm doing. But I'll tell you, if I go out and I have my normal training week and I'll drink some alcohol, even if it's just a couple beers on the weekend, that will skyrocket the inflammation. Everything that I feel a little bit on a day-to-day basis, I will feel a lot the next couple of days. So it's not just one day. So decreasing alcohol, that'll be something that can really chip away at it.
Cheesecake makes my elbows hurt.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
So yeah, exactly.
If I sit down with a nice seasonal, a good Whole Foods, a little pumpkin pie, a little raspberry.
A nice seasonal.
Yeah, dude, that's the best. This is cheesecake season, my man.
It really is, dude.
They get the little 4-packs, or you go the 8, you get 2 slices of each.
When he says the little 4-packs, he means the full size 4 for the price of 2.
Exactly. But it's the best time of year. The spring and fall, the spring and summer stuff is like pina colada. Ain't nobody got time for that. But no, like I think it makes sense because of the amount of force you put in. But here's the thing. You're very specific because you're you're a high performer. So a lot of people, you got to parameterize your interventions based off of where you're at, right? You got to prioritize these things and okay, where can we get the amount of mechanical stress we put on is fucking astronomical. So we try and buffer that as much as we can, knowing full well that we're going to be real close to a threshold. And that's the whole point. We want to be fucking pushing the envelope. We want to fly close to the sun because we want to fucking get bigger, faster, stronger. Where it's like if your movement is shit and you're not loading a lot or loading correctly, you would look to benefit way more there as far as bringing that graph, that junta 2-dimensional hand graph into center and being out of pain from just worrying about the move. I think that has a way more of a contribution to your pain, your inflammation, than maybe some of the turmeric stuff. And I would say, but
it's a case-to-case basis, right? So you might have someone that moves really well, but they drink a lot, and then they're not taking any sort of anti-inflammatory. So simply by adding in a fish oil and taking out the alcohol, that could resolve their problems. Sure. Then you might have someone that moves really well, but they're moving a ton of fucking weight, and then maybe they're doing these other things to the extent that they will help, then maybe we just need to deload them, scale back that stimulus of how much stress they're putting through their joints.
Makes sense. So almost creating indices in which you could measure someone's contribution towards their global or overall systemic inflammation, one being mechanical, one being dietary pro-inflammation, one being dietary anti-inflammation.
Right.
And then neurological, sleep, things like that.
Giving
them a score across each one, and then being, okay, based off these scores, you're testing low here. You're mechanical, you move well. We're not going to focus too much on that. Your issue seems to be more in these lagging indices.
Absolutely.
I think we could do
so
that.
I think
we couldn't.
It's
smarter.
The things that you're doing wrong, I think, have more of an impact than things you're doing right. So if you're taking your turmeric, your fish oil, and not drinking alcohol, but you're moving really poorly, that's going to have a bigger effect than these things can counteract. So it's always going to be the things that you're doing a bad job at that are going to have a bigger effect than the things you're doing a good job at.
And because the thing, regardless of what we're doing, the spectrum thing, it's not. One is not the opposite of the other. One is just an absence of the other.
Right.
It's not a push-pull. It's a pull and hopefully making that pull a little bit less.
Yeah.
So, because we're always driven to an inflammatory state, right? We're not some fucking Zen, Tai Chi, fucking sand garden person. We're just chilling, eating, I don't know, what would be non-inflammatory? Water.
Chia seeds,
sure. Flax.
Oh, fucking
Getting your flax in.
Kale.
But yeah, so we're always driven to an inflammatory state. So everything we're doing is to minimize that push, but also we're not trying to pull back. We're just trying to do things to decrease the amount of force going in that inflammation.
Yeah,
route.
keep you to a place where you're not in pain. You can perform at your best.
Wow. Novel. What a novel fucking concept. 45 minutes of yelling. We
I know.
arrived at that.
As simple as
But
that.
no, and I dig it though. Like I think, understanding the local, understanding the mechanics of the joint, the stress of the joint, and then moving global, not just mechanically, but global to lifestyle factors, global to intake of food or refined sugars, and figuring out where you're tipping the scales, I think is an underlooked, especially in our scope where we just look mechanical, structure, function, right? Where we have an onus for our patients and our athletes to start looking more globally in the sense of across systems, having a network way of thinking about how we're going to treat a patient or address a patient. I'm not saying go full-blown fucking witch doctor, but I'm saying know the literature on common interventions for decreasing inflammation or minimizing the amount of inflammatory stress we're going to put on the body.
Cool.
Lumberjack Productions, got to shout him out. Kyle, endless patience.